Now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Larsen, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Graves, for calling today's FAA reauthorization hearing on navigating the comprehensive passenger experience. Today we'll discuss ways to improve that experience. This includes preventing future flight disruptions, investing in airport infrastructure needed to accommodate the ever-growing demand for air travel, and ensuring we strengthen policies designed to support all passengers, including those with disabilities, to ensure they have a dignified and safe travel experience. Just 3 years ago, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the globe, causing air travel to plummet and massive disruptions throughout the global aviation industry. According to TSA, U.S. passenger screening levels fell as much as 90% in 2020 compared to similar periods in 2019, the sharpest aviation decline in history. Fortunately, the demand for air travel rebounded much stronger than anyone could have expected, and in 2022, more than 850 million people traveled on scheduled air carriers, an increase of more than 50% from 2020. And we celebrate that return to air travel. And yet that dramatic and unanticipated rebound created its own set of issues. Many commercial airlines were ill-prepared for the sudden spike in demand, which created staffing and operational challenges that led to more than 2.5% of scheduled flights canceled, with at least another 22.5% delayed by at least 15 minutes between June and August of 2022. The shutdown of the FAA's training academy for air traffic controllers during the pandemic also led to staffing challenges, further contributing to some of the widespread disruptions seen in recent years. Additionally, the recent NOTAM outage this January and the unprecedented number of Southwest Airlines cancellations last December show how other factors, such as insufficient planning, outdated technologies, and severe weather, can make our national airspace vulnerable to widespread disruptions. That's why in the wake of the cancellations last December, I, along with 25 of my Democratic colleagues on this committee, sent a letter to the DOT urging more action to protect consumers against future disruptions and to ensure each affected consumer is made whole. Stranded passengers should not have to decide between paying potentially exorbitant fees to rebook another flight or miss valuable time with family and friends. Furthermore, in the aftermath of the NOTAM outage, I joined Chair Graves and 120 of our colleagues in sending a letter to the DOT demanding answers as to why the NOTAM system failed and urging the FAA to take immediate action to ensure the stability of that system. To enhance the passenger experience, we must address the root causes of these mass disruptions to help prevent them from occurring and ensure passengers are made whole when they do. But we can't optimize that experience without addressing the infrastructure needs to accommodate them. The FAA's current forecast predicts passenger traffic will increase roughly 2% per year over the next 2 years. In the Puget Sound region, the number of airline passengers is expected to grow from 24 million in 2018 to as high as 55.5 million in the next 25 years. The bipartisan infrastructure law provided $25 billion for airport infrastructure, a historic investment that allows airports to modernize and expand terminals, reduce congestion, and address the anticipated rise in passengers. Yet there is more to be done. And to enhance that experience, the passenger experience, we have to invest in our airport infrastructure. So I look forward to hearing from Mr. Kevin Dolio, Director of Aviation for the Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport, and about how Congress can best enable airports to meet their growing passenger needs. And as we consider how to bolster the passenger experience in the upcoming bill, we must ensure that we consider all passengers, including those with disabilities. The latest U.S. Census estimates 42.6 million Americans have a disability, with many having mobility issues. And last November, the subcommittee held a hearing to better understand this community's air travel experience, including challenges with boarding the aircraft, inaccessible lavatories, and damaged wheelchairs and mobility aids. To ensure the passenger experience, we have to ensure that air travel is accessible, safe, and dignified for all passengers. I look forward to hearing from our good friend, Mr. Lee Page, with the Paralyzed Veterans of America, the PVA, about these issues and how Congress can work with stakeholders to help fill the gaps in aviation accessibility. And Mr. Page, thanks again for coming to educate us in front of this committee. In the upcoming FAA reauthorization, this committee has to examine all aspects of the passenger experience, from ensuring consumers are fully protected against flight disruptions, to improving the transparency of fees and other airline policies, to expanding airport capacity to accommodate the growth of future travelers. And so my thanks again to today's witnesses. Look forward to identifying the ways that we can help, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Larsen. Recognize Ranking Member Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to welcome our witnesses and thank them for being here today. We've got a lighting system in front of you for our witnesses. When the lights, there are three lights, there's red, green, and yellow. And when it's green, obviously it means go. That means you're on for 5 minutes. Yellow means you're used probably 4 minutes and 30 seconds, so you need to be winding up. And red means you're finished. Cut it off. Get the hook. As unanimous consent, the witness's full statements be included in the record. Without objection, so ordered.
As your written testimony has been made part of the record, the subcommittee asks that you limit your oral remarks to 5 minutes. With that, Ms. Pinkerton, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to be here today. I want you to know airlines are doing everything in their control to constantly improve every aspect of the customer experience, starting from when customers search for and book their tickets and continuing until they have safely reached their destinations on time. Airlines compete aggressively to attract repeat customers. You all know
Sorry, Ms. Chair,
aviation
could you pull that, could you ask her to pull that microphone like right in your, yeah.
Commercial aviation is emerging from the most difficult 2 years in our history. It's hard to believe that air travel dropped 96% in the spring of 2020. Yet despite these challenges, nobody could have predicted the U.S. aviation system has remained safe, reliable, and resilient. Although we are constantly working to improve and have taken note of the recent warning signs that have put a spotlight on what our system needs to remain the gold standard of aviation safety. There are really two things that I think we need to do to improve the customer experience. One, it's about our people, and two, it's about technology. Airlines learned that in a post-COVID world, we need more employees to operate a smaller schedule. Simply, it takes it takes more people to operate fewer flights. This is due to workforce issues across all industries that I'm sure you'll hear from our other colleagues about. To address this, passenger carriers have expeditiously hired a record number of people, 100,000 people in the last 2 years. We now have the largest workforce that we've had in 20 years. However, we know a larger percent of our workforce has less on-the-job experience today, the pre-pandemic workforce. So to address that, we put a strong focus on training and proficiency, and we think it's paying off. One of A4A's top priorities for the FAA reauthorization bill is improving workforce development and diversity by strengthening the workforce grants that you all created in the 2018 bill, as well as legislation creating a federal loan program for pilots and mechanics. Additionally, we strongly support NATCA's request for addressing the controller shortage that has simply gone on for too long. FAA must update their staffing model and hire and train accordingly. Turning to technology, it's another ingredient for a safe, reliable, and resilient system. Despite losing $49 billion in 2020 and 2021, U.S. carriers have invested a record $26 billion in capital expenditures. This includes new planes, ground equipment, and technology. $6.2 billion of that expenditure in 2022 was spent on passenger experience, giving our frontline employees tools, and our own operational systems. But it's also critical that FAA modernize its technology as well. Most Americans are fully aware of the NOTAM outage that caused the first ground stop since 9/11, and there were also issues in January with the Miami ERAM system, one of our busiest airspaces in the country. The FAA's facilities and equipment budget that funds technology has been stagnant since 2009. It hasn't kept pace with inflation. The FAA needs both stable and sufficient funding. There are several multi-billion-dollar projects that are long overdue and haven't produced the promised results. I could talk more in detail about the fact that we're still using paper strips instead of electronic strips. We need a